In the late 1980s, something truly amazing began to happen in the green fields of England. Reports came in of sightings such as this: silvery discs flying or hovering low over the open countryside, and apparently these objects were seen in great numbers.
The town of Warminster has gained the reputation as the UFO capital of England. The sheer number of sightings in that area has been nothing short of staggering. One particular phenomenon we've been watching with interest has been the sightings of a spherical object that seems to glow amber, orange, or gold. There have been quite a number of sightings of that kind.
And such UFO sightings were often only the beginning of the mystery. According to eyewitness accounts, with the first rays of the next morning's sun came astonishing evidence of the previous night's encounter with the unknown. Someone or something left an area of the field flattened, pressed down into perfect geometric shapes.
The crops are not cut, they are not broken. They've been carefully and systematically swirled flat to the ground.
And over the years, these patterns have revealed themselves to be perfect circles, or ovals, or circles with rings, and sometimes circles, rings, and satellites. If there is a connection between the UFOs and the mysterious markings, the so-called crop circles may constitute the most positive evidence yet for the existence of alien visitors to our planet. But are we sure that the crop circles and UFOs are related?
Almost from the beginning, crop circles have appeared in association with the report of aerial phenomena. In the most extreme cases, people have reported beams of light touching ground level, where crop circles have been later discovered, or indeed in many cases, the little balls of orange light dancing over the field, and on occasions, literally appearing in the fields. These sightings have often been followed by discoveries of the crop circles.
But is the connection between the aerial phenomenon and the crop markings purely circumstantial evidence? Or are there other reasons to believe that these symbols in the field were made by extraterrestrial beings? Does the answer lie in these sites where witnesses say UFOs have landed? Stan Gordon is one of the world's leading authorities on alleged UFO landing sites.
There have been a number of ground traces that have been found both here in Pennsylvania and throughout the world. Some of these traces indicate circular areas, ring-shaped areas, ovals, irregular sites. In some cases, you have the top of the area that's been burnt and charred. In some cases, soil and plant life has been removed.
But J. Allen Hynek, the father of modern UFO research, reported witnessing a flying saucer landing site in Canada that was suspiciously like the classic crop circles.
As though on a signal, all 5 of these objects rose straight up, as though on a signal, and where each one had been was a 9-foot circle of matted down grass.
Does this mean all such strange circles in the grass have been created by a UFO? Or is there another, more likely explanation that would describe all of these phenomena?
The official explanation from the British government is that these crop circles are actually formed by the wind. Presumably, we are led to believe that this is a rigorous wind system which etches the crop circles into the fields. The British government's whirlwind theory appears to have been accepted by everybody concerned, particularly, I think, the public, bearing in mind it in no way fulfills the mechanism which actually forms a whirlwind, i.e. they are formed by thermal inductance and appear during the daylight, and or in the lee of a hill. In southern England, we have very few hills, and most of the crop circles appear at night. Are we to believe that patterns as intricate as this are actually formed by some freak of the weather? Look at the way the grain is being woven and these precisely well-deformed edges. Well, no whirlwinds did these things, and it's absolute madness to pretend they did.
Does that mean that this pattern had to have been created by a mechanical object, piloted by some intelligent being? There are a variety of other theories about where the crop markings come from. One of the most recent explanations is that the markings are being made by the satellite-based weapons system developed for the American Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI.
There is a theory that the SDI program, the government themselves, are actually employing high-tech equipment in space to etch into the fields of southern England and other parts of the world patterns of this kind. There are two reasons why I don't believe it's even a starter, is that we had reports of this phenomena in the same fields as we have them today in 1946. We didn't have the technology up there when they were first appearing. And the second, I think the most major point, is that these patterns could be laid into the fields of secure areas, of military establishments, testing areas. Be very simple, but these are appearing in public areas. Some of them are actually crossing major highways. I cannot begin to conceive of any Western government employing such technology in such an irresponsible manner. There are even those who put the theory forward that these things are formed by mating hedgehogs or porcupines rolling around in the field.
Are any of these theories any more credible than the belief that these are the landing sites of vehicles from another world? All of these theories overlook a much simpler possibility. Might these grain patterns be a simple hoax? In 1990, two Englishmen came forward with a confession that they had personally created the crop circles. But if Doug and Dave did do it, how did they get from England to America to Russia and back? How did they make as many as 15 crop circles in one night? How did they overlap the stalks without breaking them? How? It's the question we'll be trying to answer when UFO Diaries returns. Visions of crop circles were all too earthly.
Remember in the fall of 1991 when these two gentlemen in southern England were trotted out on the world media as the explanation for the crop circle mystery? Two guys who claim they did it all.
According to them, they had boards which they pushed down across the grain, and they just kept walking around in circles or whatever until they'd made the shapes they wanted. All of a big practical joke.
And for some reason, the worldwide network media accepted that
and announced to the world that the crop circle mystery had been solved.
There simply is no way that just two men could have possibly constructed all of these patterns, appearing on occasions 15 per day, without getting caught at it. Plus, if hoaxers went out during the middle of the night just to make this, how on earth would they have possibly constructed a pattern like Barbary Castle during the shortest night of the British summer? It would have taken a team of hoaxers days, and it appeared simply overnight.
Crop circles like UFOs are a worldwide phenomenon. The U.S. and Canada, Australia, Japan, they're all over the place. I heard some reports about them in the Soviet Union as well, in the former Soviet Union. They're a worldwide phenomenon, and the idea that two old English barflies are flying all over the world creating these things is patently ridiculous.
Furthermore, many crop circle experts say the markings in the fields are perfect geometric figures, often accurate to within less than a quarter of an inch. And yet is it not possible that all the crop markings really are hoaxes? Even if Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley didn't make all the crop circles, might not the real culprits be hundreds of hoaxers all over the world?
People that believe crop circles were made by human beings are overlooking some very important features of the crop circles. They are interwoven and intricately laid, not at all the way that they would be crushed to the ground if people stamped them.
And chemical analysis of grains from a field where a crop circle had appeared suggests another change that no human hand could have made.
Every plant on Earth has a distinctive energy pattern, and we have looked closely and compared the energy pattern of plants inside the crop circle with those outside as controls in the general area. And this was a non-conventional plant analysis process, but they nonetheless secured a starch crystal from a single plant inside a single crop circle, and discovered that looking through a microscope, the lattice structure was very different to anything they had ever seen before.
there are fundamental biochemical and biophysical changes at the respiratory cell level and the cell pit level of plants that cannot be hoaxed. Doug and Dave in southern England are not the explanation for formations that are worldwide, including rice paddies in Japan.
If the crop markings do form mathematically precise geometric symbols, and the plants inside have been laid in extremely complex patterns, and the organic matter of the plants has been chemically altered, then are we finally looking at indisputable evidence of some superhuman force at work? Many experts investigating the crop circle sites have detected evidence of intense microwave radiation not present in ordinary fields. Do the microwave traces prove an unearthly origin? After all, we currently use microwaves in applications ranging from cooking to telecommunications. Is it not possible that by some strange set of circumstances, microwaves such as those used for carrying telephone messages have somehow struck the ground instead of their receiving station? This would account for the silent and instantaneous arrival of the crop circles. If that is possible, should we now consider that perhaps UFOs are not necessarily connected with the crop circle phenomenon? And if we do, must we also dismiss photographs such as this? Hundreds of eyewitnesses have seen objects like this one in close proximity to crop circles or to the place where a crop circle would later be found.
Well, I arrived at a field overlooking a wheat field, in fact, where there was a major crop circle at a place called Alton Barnes, very close to Stonehenge in England. There were 8 of us, scientists and engineers, some of whom are employed by the US government here. And what happened, at great surprise, out of absolutely nowhere, swooped a large British military army helicopter, bristling with technology. But he came in very, very close to us. We had no idea what he was up to at the time. We thought maybe initially that he was taking photographs of the crop circles that were already there. But he came to within, I would estimate, 40 feet of our heads, and there was nothing short, I mean, it was nothing short of harassment. I think there was a major attempt to move us out of that area. I had no idea why they would want to do that, because I've lived there for 48 years. But as if one wasn't enough, and the downdraft literally was pushing the hedge row alongside onto our vehicle, a second one swooped in behind him. These army helicopters were pushing us, attempting to push us out of the area. As we moved up the highway, as a public highway close to this field, they followed us behind the hedgerow. But then we stopped, and one of them moved away rapidly from us over the top of this large pattern and moved up to approached a small sphere of light, pulsing. I would estimate it was probably 18 inches or so in diameter. It couldn't possibly have missed seeing it. And in one frame of the film has simply disappeared and is now behind the helicopter. The helicopter appears to maneuver itself on its own axis to get a better view of this because it's now behind it. And my assumption is that the second helicopter is being told to back his helicopter up as opposed to turn it, and reverses his helicopter until this ball of light is now right in front of him again. And it simply disappears. With that, they hung around the area for just a few more minutes, and both of them made away. It is obviously an assumption. If I were pushed hard on what I thought they were doing, I would be, I think, forced to say that it seemed as if we were unwelcome. We had walked into an area where they were already engaged in something involving this very small ball of light, which we have had reported to us many times by people in that area. And 2 major patterns were already in the field, and the following day a number of more major patterns appeared in that same area.
What is it that the government knows and wants to keep us, the public, at a complete arm's length distance from? If they have an understanding of what type or types of non-human intelligence are interacting with our planet, I'm nervous about the fact that they have kept a policy of silence, disinformation, and ridicule on phenomena that they themselves have been studying intimately for 50 years.
Since the beginning of the 1990s, the overnight appearance of crop markings has been increasing geometrically. Now scarcely a day goes by in England that a new formation is not seen. Even more amazing has been the changes in the patterns. No longer simple circles and rings, the crop markings are now expanding, growing in size and complexity. If these markings are indeed the work of UFOs, then a sudden and remarkable change has taken place. In the past, it's always been believed that the pilots of these craft were endeavoring to visit the Earth in secret and to leave no trace. Now you might say, it seems they're deliberately leaving their fingerprints at the scene of the crime. Why? Why would secret visitors from another world suddenly want us to know of their presence here? Intriguing evidence that someone is trying to communicate with us when UFO Diaries returns. To suggest that crop markings are created by some kind of aerial phenomenon, possibly a flying craft of extraterrestrial origin. But do we know that for certain? Much of what we've learned about the formation of crop circles has been based on eyewitness testimony.
A young woman told us about a globe-shaped UFO from which came a beam of light she described as being brighter than white. A beam of light which struck down across the dark sky into a field near the ancient mound of Silbury Hill. In that field was discovered the next morning a Celtic cross pattern of crop circles.
Usually that's considered to be extremely good evidence. But in the case of crop markings, the most striking proof may come from what is not seen.
Several people claim to have witnessed the formation of crop circles and state they did not see any silver discs or globes or tubes floating in the sky above them. In fact, all they saw was absolutely nothing that was causing this effect. There was no whirlwind or anything like that. And so it truly seemed that the stalks of grain were simply falling over of their own accord.
We have more than 70 reports worldwide of people who claim to have seen things form. People describe frequently a buzzing sound. They will see the plants oscillating, whiplashing, and suddenly the effect takes place. And in less than 15 seconds, like opening up the fan, the plants are swirled and are lying to the ground. Many people describe seeing glowing lights, beams of light entering the area. Some describe as the golden ball of light enters the area, a loud explosion, a loud retort, a bang, at the same time as this particular effect takes place.
Do these experiences with an unseen force argue for or against the culprits being UFOs? After all, many witnesses have claimed to have been watching a UFO when it simply disappeared or became invisible. But then why would UFOs leave such an obvious sign and sometimes conceal themselves while doing it? Or is there some reason why the crop markings must be made without its source being detected? Perhaps the only evidence most people would believe would have to come from a team of recognized authorities who have actually witnessed the formation of a crop marking.
The Centre for Crop Circle Studies kept a close watch on the English countryside throughout the summer of 1991. On June the 22nd, 1991, 3 of the observers spotted a glowing orange or golden ball hovering in the sky, then moving away at a fantastic speed. Unfortunately, there were no crop markings that appeared on that night, but other markings had appeared on other occasions within just 1 kilometer of that location.
Then, Colin Andrews and his surveillance team were more fortunate.
We set up a sophisticated surveillance operation in 1991 in which we deployed radar, low-light cameras, infrared, and we even stationed some dogs from a nearby farm in the field there. We secured the whole field with security, intruder infrared beams, and we're convinced that no human being certainly could enter that area without us knowing about it. But early that morning, we had fog formed, and without any effect on any of the equipment, no radar returns whatsoever, from the center of that fog as it melted away was indeed this intricate pattern.
Is that the purpose of the crop markings? For everyone to see them? Are they a message to humankind from some other form of life?
As the years have gone by, the crop markings have been changing. They've been becoming increasingly complex and increasingly pictographic. In fact, many people now refer to all crop markings as agriglyphs, which simply means crop writings.
If these are deliberately formed symbols, then it does seem logical that they have some kind of meaning.
This is extraterrestrial, and this is communication.
But if they are messages from space, some kind of attempt to communicate with us through writing or art, what is it that they're trying to say? The race to learn the real meaning of these mysterious messages when UFO Diaries returns. These are messages from some other life form. What do these messages say? And is there any way to decipher the code of the crop circles?
Many people believe that the meaning of the markings is related to the place where they are found. For example, in England, the vast majority of the markings have appeared in the area around Stonehenge, and also Silbury Hill, which is the oldest and the largest man-made mound in all of Europe. In fact, one of the most remarkable agroglyphs ever found appeared with its axis pointing directly towards Silbury Hill. Since we know that Stonehenge and Silbury Hill were the works of an ancient culture with a surprising knowledge of astronomy, we may wonder if whoever is making these symbols in the crops in this area didn't give them this knowledge thousands of years ago.
Could UFOs have been common visitors to southwest England throughout its history? If so, it might explain at least one curious coincidence. In the region of the June 1991 sightings of the golden balls in the sky, there are numerous hills that still carry the names they were given hundreds of years ago. Is it significant that one of those was long ago named Golden Ball Hill?
It is possible that someone has been trying to contact us for a long, long time, but that we haven't understood how to receive this message. I believe the crop markings are indeed messages, but not perhaps letters or words as we might think of them. I believe they are messages to the subconscious mind, a reminder of some deeply hidden part of ourselves that knows we are just one of many intelligent races in the universe.
These extraterrestrials have been manipulating life on this planet for eons.
If these are being formed by extraterrestrials, I guess we should at least be comforted in the fact that they have attempted at communication.
If these are communiques, what is the message? Are the governments of the world telling us all we need to know? Are we only now deciphering what may be a centuries-old warning?
As the crop circles increase in complexity, at some point, perhaps the creators will make themselves known.
Can we be certain that they haven't already revealed themselves right here in the pages of the UFO Diaries? The mystery of the UFOs continues to be one of the most puzzling riddles facing our world today. What are these things that so many witnesses have seen streaking through the sky? Are they piloted by beings from another planet? And perhaps most importantly, why would extraterrestrial travelers come here? Is there something special about the Earth or the human race that draws these beings to our world? And if so, what is it? Many UFO researchers now believe that the answer to these questions may lie in our own history. One theory, for example, is that alien beings may have suddenly developed a profound interest in us on the day we exploded our first atomic bomb. Did visitors from another world fear that we had then become a threat to other life in the universe? That with our primitive rockets, we might launch devastating weapons at other inhabited worlds? There may be convincing evidence to support this theory. It was, after all, shortly after the development of atomic power in 1945 that the first official flying saucer report was filed.
In 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying in the mountains above Mount Rainier, Washington. When he landed, he claimed that there were 9 silvery discs that he saw following him up there that were going, and he estimated, 1,700 miles an hour. He described the movement of these craft as being like a saucer skipping across water. The reporters were very excited about this, and one of them coined the term flying saucer, and that took off.
But were the 9 objects Kenneth Arnold saw really the first UFOs?
During World War II, there were the Foo Fighters, luminous objects which would follow bombers on their way to bombing targets in Germany.
Or do objects seen in our skies earlier in history suggest the real mission of the alien visitors?
Well, in 1896 in California, people began to see what they thought was the solution. A phantom airship appeared over Sacramento in November of that year. They saw this big searchlight and an object behind it that presumably had propellers or wings or something of the sort. It moved into the rest of the country, particularly in April of 1897, and you would get any number of descriptions. One illustration from Minnesota shows something that looks like an aerial country ham with lights. Then there's another one from Texas that looks like a swallow-tailed football with bat wings. But there were several thousand reports made during 1896 and 1897 from all over the country of this strange object. And the newspapers over the next 2 months gave all sorts of illustrations of what this supposed secret invention looked like.
Is it possible that the phantom airships were in fact the same kind of UFOs seen by witnesses today? If so, we may find we must look even further back in history to find the first UFOs.
Okay, over here, I have some drawings that they're over 400 years old.
Recent discoveries of documents over 400 years old have many skeptics re-examining their position on these ancient witnesses of UFOs.
In the 16th century self-flying saucers?
Whoever did these drawings apparently saw something.
There were sightings in the 16th century as well, and these were usually ascribed to religious portents, signs from God. In August of 1566 in Basel, Switzerland, these large black globes floated in the sky. And in April 1561, these objects appeared over Nuremberg.
When we enter into the 16th and 17th centuries, we enter into a golden age of UFO-type sightings. John Calvin said that a miracle happened every day. In one case from 1600, you can see a depiction of what they thought burning beams in the sky looked like, probably much more artificial looking in the illustration than they really were to observe. But they were the kind of thing that people became quite excited about in those days.
Will we ever find the very first UFO sighting? How far back into human history can we search without learning of strange objects seen in the skies?
People have seen some kind of strange objects in the sky for as long as we have any human records. We can look back to Roman historians like Livy, who would report that an object like a flying shield came passing through the sky.
Is this a description 2,000 years old of the same UFOs seen in our century?
There are descriptions of UFOs in documents even older than the Romans.
Do you have anything even older?
If you wanted to get
Prior to the 16th century, most written records concerned religious problems. And here, the texts abound with rich descriptions of visitors from the skies.
In this, it's called the Mahabharata.
The Hindu epic poem, the Mahabharata, tells of events that happened about 1200 BC. One of the heroes of the poem is described as going up into heaven this way.
On a gigantic beam of light which shone as the sun and whose noise was like the thunder of a thunderstorm.
On liftoff, whoever wrote this witnessed some kind of a ship blasting off over 3,000 years ago.
Well, it's just a poem. You don't think that men from outer space would have left more than a few drawings or a few poems.
Did the author of that ancient text witness what we would call today a blast-off? Supposing for a moment that space travelers have visited Earth for thousands of years, would they not have left some proof of their existence? Something besides stories and drawings of strange objects in the sky? Many UFO researchers believe that exactly this kind of evidence can be found on the plains of Nazca in southern Peru. These lines are probably 2,000 years old, but the resemblance to a modern airport is quite striking.
In some cases, the Nazca lines, for instance, they're described as being runways, but they're simply long, straight lines gouged in the desert, and there's no way any kind of an airplane could land on them and survive.
Are the markings on the plains of Nazca the remains of the busy airport they resemble? If so, they suggest a large volume of traffic, perhaps hundreds of space vessels coming and going.
If alien spacecraft then in use are like the ones they're using now, they would not have needed runways. Perhaps these are some kind of navigational markings because they're visible only from the air.
If so, what were the interplanetary travelers bringing to Earth? Or What were they taking away? Could it be that they had a specific plan that included the inhabitants on Earth? The astounding answers when UFO Diaries returns. Travelers from a distant planet have been visiting our world for centuries. The possibility exists that they were not here as casual observers. Could the alien visitors have had some deep interest in human development? And if so, how much of our history was affected by beings not of this Earth?
I believe that there is substantial evidence that we were visited in ancient times by beings who wanted to help us to advance and progress. In Istanbul, for example, there is a strange map which had been made by the 16th century Turkish cartographer Piri Reis.
And you say the Piri Reis map was made in 1513?
If it has been dated accurately, this map was made in 1513, only 21 years after Columbus reached the Americas.
Quite a complete map for that time.
They show that Antarctica is a continent, a fact we didn't learn until the 19th century.
I mean, look, this map shows mountains in Antarctica.
And this map even shows mountains there that were not discovered until the 20th century.
Did this early cartographer get his information from someone who had seen our world from outer space? And is it significant that Piri Reis's extraordinary map came into being just at the time European civilization was beginning a vast expansion? Could alien beings somehow have taken an interest in the course of human progress? If so, their involvement may have been vast and far-reaching, including many scientific advances literally handed down from the heavens.
If you have doubts that some culture far in advance of ours has been helping us along, you should look at some of the cultures of Mexico and Central America. You'll see, for example, a pyramid in Yucatan called El Castillo, the castle. Twice a year, exactly on the spring and autumn solstice, the sun aligns across those steps in such a way as to cast an eerie shadow, the image of a giant snake crawling down the pyramid. The snake represents Kukulkan, the Mayan god who supposedly created all life on Earth. The local legend has it that Kukulkan himself ordered the pyramid at Chichen Itza built in this way.
But why would the serpent god command such a structure to be built? And why was it carefully constructed in such a way that the serpent image appears, as if by magic, twice a year?
The Mayan pyramid works as a calendar. It predicts exactly 365 1/4 days. For people who had no other calendar, this signal of planting and harvesting season meant life and death. I believe they had somebody to help them figure this all out.
If this remarkable structure were a gift from the gods, as their legend has it, then these super beings were indeed deeply concerned with the local culture. It would seem they wanted these people to thrive and survive.
We have to consider this. Around 600 AD, they abandoned their cities, crops, and everything and moved north. There was no war, plague, or famine. They simply moved as though someone had told them to move.
Was the Mayan nation deliberately raised in this controlled environment and then set out to share its advanced knowledge with the rest of the region? Isn't it more reasonable to believe that the Mayan people were simply more advanced than we've thought? That they achieved scientific wonders without any outside help?
We have to take into account the stories told by so many of the native cultures of how their races were visited by beings who came down from the sky to visit and help them.
Is that it? That's it. Still here.
Take, for example, this carving in the Mexican temple at Palenque. It is supposedly related to that culture's stories of how it came to be, of how they survived all these years.
I'll have to admit, does look familiar.
The resemblance to a modern space traveler is very striking. But might this not also be mere coincidence? If so, then the mystery only grows deeper when we learn that many researchers believe this sculpture represents Kukulkan, who came down from the sky and gave mankind many technological advances, including the calendar. And yet, many researchers remain unconvinced that these artifacts prove mankind has been frequently visited by extraterrestrials. Skeptics claim that this so-called evidence indicates a technology very much like ours in the 20th century, with smoke and flames, airport runways, pressure suits, and so on.
All of this looks like the kind of technology we use today.
Could beings from another world have made visits to Earth using rockets and planes similar to those we use today? If so, they would have to have come from somewhere in the sky.
It seems improbable that beings light years away would drop in on us, but visitors from one of our neighboring worlds, that's something else.
But if that is true, which neighboring world? Could it be that there is another planet, one we have yet to learn about? We'll find out when UFO Diaries return.
You have thank you very much. Imaginative people of all kinds believe that intelligent life might exist on some of Earth's nearest neighbors. In fact, many people still associate UFOs with Mars or Venus.
But now we know that conditions on the other planets in our system make it very unlikely that any kind of recognizable life could exist on these inhospitable worlds.
And so the notion of Earth being visited by creatures from nearby planets now seems utterly impossible. Or is it?
Zecharia Sitchin has dedicated years of study to the belief that this world's most ancient visitors came from a planet in our own system.
I believe that the answer to most of our questions about extraterrestrial visitors lies in the ancient records of the Sumerians. The Sumerian civilization emerged in what is now Iraq about 6,000 years ago. They provided the basis for every great culture that followed them, starting with the Babylonians and Assyrians and on, up to our own modern society. Every aspect of civilization that we consider essential had its first in Sumer. Writing and mathematics, the wheel, the kiln, brick-making, high-rise buildings, kingship, codes of law, astronomy, and much, much more. Many cultures struggled for centuries to advance and to develop. But the Sumerian civilization appeared almost overnight as if planted there.
The Sumerians had detailed knowledge of the solar system thousands of years before modern astronomy. How could they have known?
Most amazing was the Sumerian knowledge of astronomy. They knew of all the planets we know of today, described them in texts, and even depicted them correctly by location and size. The astronomer Copernicus is often said to be the first to prove that the planets orbited around the sun, and that Earth was one of those planets. That was in 1543. But the Sumerians said the same thing 5,500 years earlier. Even more amazing, they described Uranus and Neptune as blue-green twins. Modern science was unable to closely observe these planets until 1986 with the flyby mission of the Voyager probe that found them to be blue-green twins exactly as the Sumerians had described them thousands of years earlier.
Was this a fortunate choice of words for an imaginative Sumerian writer? Or was it based on information from someone who had seen Uranus and Neptune at close range?
And does this mean we found the first UFO 6,000 years in the past?
The Sumerian texts, such as this one, explicitly state that all their advanced knowledge came from those whom they called Anunnaki, literally meaning those who from heaven to earth came.
But where did these visitors come from? Did the Sumerians leave any clues to the origin of the Anunnaki?
Ancient Sumerian writings describe a planet orbiting the sun on an oblique to the others, and of such a long orbit that it only makes one complete circuit every 3,600 of our years. They call this world Nibiru, and it was from that world that the Anunnaki came. If this theory is correct, it suggests how an inhabited planet, called Planet X by astronomers, could have once been close enough to Earth for the Anunnaki to reach us with some kind of short-range vehicles.
Does this explain how alien explorers might have come to Earth? In spaceships, not too different from those we have today.
And if there is a planet, such as the Sumerian texts describe, Has it not passed by Earth time and time again?
My study of history shows several time periods during which mankind's knowledge and progress seem to have suddenly leaped forward. And they do seem to be about 3,600 years apart. To me, this is highly suggestive that the Anunnaki have taken advantage of their proximity to Earth on several occasions and have helped us to advance and progress every time.
Has human progress been periodically boosted by the race that started our earliest civilization? Or are we part of a cosmic science experiment?
And why would an alien race be so willing, even eager, to help advance the course of human progress? Could it be that we are somehow part of them? Astounding answers when UFO Diaries returns.
Have come to Earth throughout the ages, arriving from a hidden planet in our own solar system.
Are we any closer to an explanation of why these ancient visitors would be so eager to help mankind progress and develop?
It seems very likely that these space travelers, thousands of years ago, wished for our race to survive for the same reason we wish our children to survive. Maybe it was these beings who seeded this planet with their own life forms, and we may be, in a real sense, their children.
If that is true, we found the first UFO, and it's the one that brought us here to this world we call our home. In fact, this theory may be supported by the biblical account of the creation of humankind.
The 6th chapter of Genesis tells us the Nephilim took the daughters of men as wives, and these human women bore children to them, and these were the mighty men who were of old. Could this refer to the alien visitors the Sumerians called the Anunnaki? Did men from another world mate with human females, producing hybrid offspring?
Yes, the evidence is very convincing. We may well be mixed breed descendants of humans and extraterrestrials. In fact, according to ancient records, the females whom the Nephilim married were offspring of Adam, himself created